just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
Welcome back to another episode of the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. We had our first week of college football action. It was not week 1, it was week 0. So for you sickos out there like me, I was very entertained watching Northwestern beat Nebraska and matchups like UConn versus Utah State. I know, Ryan, you were also enthralled by the quality of play that we witnessed in Hawaii against Vanderbilt. You probably had a nice weekend watching these games, right?
Oh, man, what was that game? 63-10 or something like that?
Dude, I am just
gross.
so proud of the fact that so many people called like that Hawaii was going to cover in that game, and it was like a 6.5 point spread. And I was one of the few people that said, that's not going to happen. There's no way.
Oh, by the way, there was a little FCS action this week, man. Who is that receiver? Ty James for, what's it, Campbell or is it Mercer? I always forget.
Mercer.
Dude,
Morehead
who
State
is
sucks,
that
though. Wait.
kid, man? Who is that kid?
Morehead State sucks, though. So, like, I got to see him against some real competition before we.
But I looked at his stats, Joe. He had like 600-something yards last year and like 20-something catches. He averaged like almost 30 yards a catch. And apparently he played at Georgia his freshman year. So, like.
I got to be completely honest. As much as I try to act connected on a lot of the FCS stuff, or try to no, act's the wrong word because it makes it seem like I'm pretending.
You are pretending.
As much as I try to portray my focus on the FCS and attention to the FCS, I have not heard of him. This is the first I've heard of him.
Dude, I don't know who he is, but I'm like, oh. And then I looked at his stats last year. I'm like, oh, and he started. Look, I think he was a walk-on at Georgia originally, but like still, he was on a Georgia football team at some point. You still have to be a pretty good player to be a preferred walk-on at an SEC school, so it's not like you're just a scrub, right? How'd you do on the betting front, man? Did you get any wins this week?
I was 3-1, and Ryan, he actually, he set me up perfectly for the read.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get to it, though, we're gonna talk about some of these top performances from players and just some things that stood out from us during week 0. But Ryan, you did set me up very nicely because I went 3-1. I picked Northwestern outright. I didn't pick them to cover. They were a 10-point dog. It was like plus 300 odds for them to win. I picked Northwestern. I also picked Illinois to cover against Wyoming, and then I had Vanderbilt to cover against Hawaii. Which,
oh man, Joe,
what?
Wyoming's bad, man. Like, they're really bad.
I didn't get that coming into this game. There were some people also like trying to pump up Wyoming. They lost their like whole team. I don't know why anyone would think that they're going to show up against Illinois in their second year under Bielema.
They had a couple talented quarterbacks too. Levi Williams and Sean Chambers. They both transferred, man. I'm like, oh my God, that team was awful. They were really, because honestly, Illinois is an okay team, but their quarterback's awful, man. The kid that transferred from Syracuse or whatever.
DeVito.
Tommy DeVito. And New Jersey, great. So we got to give him some respect.
Was it Prep or Bosco?
I think he's a Bosco kid. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But I was just watching. I'm just like, Illinois is letting them stay in this game for a little bit because like their quarterback play is just awful. And I'm just like, but Wyoming has nothing. Like the running back's okay, the Swan kid or whatever his name is, but everything else, I'm just like, yuck, man. So bad. So bad.
Yeah, we're out on Wyoming. We should have figured that out after the game pretty quickly. But my bets were good, and I've got a lot more bets that I've sprinkled in already for next week. I'd like to place some money line bets once those lines are out. And if you're like me, you're going to do it at BetOnline. BetOnline has so many fantastic options for betting. And the big thing for me that I really like, I remember a while ago somebody was trying to explain to me that some of these books give the lines late, but BetOnline gives you them super early so you can place your bets with plenty of time. You can do some research. And there's nowhere else better that you want to be going to than BetOnline. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information, from live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50 to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Ryan, the big headline that we had this past weekend was Northwestern versus Nebraska. And I was excited that Northwestern came out with the victory. But early on in this game, everyone was so excited by the performances of the Nebraska offense, some of these Nebraska football players. Casey Thompson for about 5 minutes was a Heisman contender for
Hey,
that one play he had.
Give him a half, man. Give him a half. He had a good first half. He had a good first half.
He had a good first half, and then he had that play, and then everyone was just geeking out. The one where he turned around and all that, which was, I mean, it was nice, but then, like, what did he do outside of that?
It's a great college football play, man. It's a great college football play.
And that's what Casey Thompson will be known for.
It's also not very translatable, because I made a tweet right after the Joe where I'm like, Casey Thompson, good college quarterback. Nothing more, nothing less. That's what he is, man. Let's not try to make him a... I mean, Joe, yes, I saw the face, and this is all I'll say, right? He was pretty solid at Texas last year, right? Like, he wasn't great. He wasn't bad. He was fine. He was a fine, passable, solid college quarterback. And I think that's what he's going to be this year for Nebraska. Like, he's not going to be bad. He's just going to be fine, right? But then there's going to be some people who are like, oh, man, but look at the plays he makes off script sometimes. It's just like, but yeah, man, but like, do you see some of the turnovers he makes sometimes too? It's just like, no.
He tripped over his own feet 2 play later. Like,
oh, my God. Yeah, I think that may have been Northwestern's only sack of the day, and Casey Thompson literally sacked himself. It was awful. Yes, very bad. Very, very bad.
So we're out on Casey Thompson as we should be. We're out on the Nebraska offense. We're out on Scott Frost. Those are all separate issues. We did get to see the first action of Peter Skoronski, who paved a lot of lanes for a very effective rushing day for Evan Hull. The entire Northwestern offensive line, I think, had a strong day against what was supposed to be considered to be a good Nebraska defensive line, a good Nebraska front seven. Yep. I think Skoronski definitely positives, but like, man, Evan Hull, dude, I was juiced up watching Evan Hull. My man was running hard. My man was running downhill. He was hitting those holes hard. Like, I'm excited about what he might be. Like, I'm not saying that he's a potential top 5 running back, but like, he really put himself on my radar. The way that he was running, the chunk plays that he was picking up. If there was like a little bit of space, he was flying through those holes, and he was running aggressively to pick up as much yardage as he could. And I honestly credit a lot of their success offensively to the way that he was playing.
He's a really interesting player, Joe, because I actually did watch him this summer. And last year, I thought it was very feast or famine with a guy like an Evan Hull. It was, I mean, he made some big plays last year on a really bad offense last season. He ran for over 1,000 yards, had 7 touchdowns, over 5 yards a carry, 33 catches, a couple touchdowns. But I really felt like he would hit some big plays, some explosive plays, but then like he wouldn't pick up like the short yardage, right? Like he would not pick up the when it's there type of thing, right? And during this game, I was like, he's running a lot harder than I remember him running last year, like tough. And he's 210 pounds. He's got pretty good explosiveness. He ran for 119 yards and had 5 catches for another 55. So this is a kid that can do it in the run game, in the pass game. I still am not sure what I think of him athletically as far as like changing direction and laterally, that type of thing. But he's got some explosiveness, man. He runs hard. So I think he opened some eyes this week. And I'll say this too. I know we want to talk about Peter Skoronski a little bit.
Yeah.
That whole offensive line dominated. But my biggest thing with Skoronski was I wanted Skoronski to take a step forward as a run blocker and from a power profile perspective. And he dominated in the run game in this one, man. Like there were several just like down blocks where he took guys off the screen, right? Like he really looked a lot stronger and a lot more powerful. And even the reps where people were trying to hype up some of these rushers for Nebraska, I was like, but Skoronski eventually did get his weight down on these power rushes and still stayed attached to the play. Like I was very impressed with Skoronski, man. If he's as powerful as he was in the first game all year, then there's not a ton of holes outside of the arm length. There's really not.
Yeah, and he's already off to a really hot start for this season. We talked about coming into the year, if he has a really good season, he shows those improvements on those levels that you're talking about, he can solidify himself as a tackle rather than as a guard. And we saw a lot of the things that we needed to see from Skoronski as a blocker. I just think in general, man, he was manhandling dudes against, again, a Nebraska front that people were supposed to be, that were claiming was supposed to be really, really good. And I didn't see anything from those Nebraska defenders. Like they were a bunch of nobodies out there, it felt like.
You know what else it helps with, Joe, honestly, is the fact that if you project him into guard before the season, I was like not hesitant, but I was also just like, he's not incredibly powerful. So like moving him inside, is that really going to do a ton for him? You know what I mean? So like it's a little bit of like a chess match back and forth, but the fact that he showed that strength profile, I mean, why can't he be Zach Martin? Again, not saying he's going to be a 7-time Pro Bowl or All Pro guard, but like, why can't he be that left tackle, that college left tackle who transitions into guard and is just a really good football player? Right. Brandon Scherf. Forrest Lamp was a guy that they tried to do the same thing. He wasn't as successful with it, but like there's been some guys that they've made that transition. Lyle Collins early on in his career was a LSU offensive tackle turned guard early on with the Dallas Cowboys. Connor Williams is a guy that we've seen coming out of Texas and being a pretty good guard for the Cowboys and now the Dolphins, even though apparently he's playing center for the Dolphins, which is just bizarre. The one note I'll make, a little bit more of a negative, is some people were very excited to see O'Shawn Mathis, who's the defensive end from TCU that transferred to Nebraska. He was invisible. And then I looked on ESPN. It said that he had 10 tackles. And I'm like, when did those Yeah, man. I posted. I was like, when did he have 10 tackles? I don't understand.
Was he like after the play, like was just cleanup or something? Like, is that what it was?
It had to be like one solo and 9 unassisted tackles or something. Like I thought he was invisible working against because he wasn't just against Skoronski. Like I just felt like he was invisible all day, whether he was working against left or right tackle. Like it just wasn't. Yeah.
But even like, especially in the second half when like Hull was like really hitting it. And that was when they closed out the game.
Cam Porter too, man. Tough little runner as well.
Was he the guy who fumbled? Was he the guy who the ball popped out of his?
I can't remember if he fumbled. He's number 2 though, and he's like 220 pounds. He's a little more like the thundering guy.
I think it's a different guy. Wait, I'm gonna.
He ran for like I thought he ran for like 90 something yards, and Hall ran for like 120, 119.
Let me see. I'm pulling up the box score. Cam Porter is number 4.
Number 4.
It might have been Cam Porter. I remember the guy had elbow tape. I think it was Cam Porter. There was one guy who busted like a huge run, and it was like when the third quarter, third quarter, it was like in that back and forth phase, and the ball just popped out. It was a really bad play on his part. They ran the ball like crazy, and as much credit as we want to give to Cam Porter and Ryan Hull, and they definitely deserve credit, the remaining emphasis is on what the offensive line did. Like I really think that this is going to be a good Nebraska team this year. I said this we did a live stream.
Whoa. Define good. What's good mean, Joe? What is good
mean
for Nebraska?
Good for Nebraska, Northwestern's standards.
Oh, Northwestern,
so,
you meant.
Sorry, is what I meant. Northwestern.
Gotcha.
There's 2 ends. It's easy to mix them up. I think this is going to be a good Northwestern team. I don't think Pat Fitzgerald is the type of coach to allow for his program to be bad 2 seasons in a row. And as they were talking about and they were showing the graphic, it's a very roller coaster team. It's up and down. This is going to be one of those up years. They're not going to win the conference, but they're going to be above 500. They're going to be competitive. And that offensive line solidified that. The last thing I just want to talk about, and I'm not saying that Ryan Hilinski is a highly draftable guy. This is not going to be a top 8 quarterback, probably not even a top 10 quarterback in the class. But Ryan Hilinski looked pretty good for what we're used to seeing. Like he didn't even really win the starting job last year, and he transferred over and he stepped in this game, man. And you even tweeted about it. I was kind of tweeting about it. Once they allowed him to just throw the ball and not be limited in his decision making, he was making some nice throws. Like he's got a little juice to his arm, and he can make some nice plays as a strong college quarterback.
He was a pretty high recruit when he went to South Carolina originally, and he's the younger brother of. He's Ryan, right, or is he Tyler? He's Ryan, right? Ryan Hilinski?
Ryan Hilinski, yes.
Okay, so Tyler Helinski was the quarterback that was at Washington State. His older brother, the one that passed away, unfortunately, from suicide, which is a very sad story because I think that he switched his number to number 3 to honor his brother. I think that was kind of the backstory there, but he was a nice recruit at South Carolina, played a little bit as a freshman, mixed results, and now he's ended up 3 years later as the Northwestern unquestioned starting quarterback. And like you said, Joe, I mean, I thought he played great, man. Like I did. I mean, shout out to the offensive line again, because they gave him all day to throw when they wanted to. But I really thought they could have done more with him. And he ended up throwing the ball 38 times. But like, how many times did Northwestern just like settle for a field goal and on 3rd and 8 decide to just run the ball or something like that? Like, honestly, I really like Pat Fitzgerald. I've liked Pat Fitzgerald my entire I love him. I think he's a really strong defensive coach. I think he's a good player, a good person. I think he's good for that Northwestern program, but he played not to lose a lot during that game, which luckily for him, Scott Frost played to lose.
Played to lose.
Right? He coached to lose during that game. So I guess if I'm doing devil's advocate, like, let Scott Frost lose the game, I guess, right? And he did, but it was still kind of an ugly contest on both sides. But I really thought, Helinski has a pretty strong arm, was accurate for the most part, made pretty quick, sound decisions. We'll see what happens with the man. I'm not here to say he's like an NFL prospect, but like, it was a good first outing. It was a really good first outing.
Yeah,
that defense played pretty well too. I know we want to talk about Helinski mostly, but Cam Mitchell might be a guy that we need to start talking about too. The cornerback, number 2, that had that interception during the game. He's got something to him, I think. But
I think you also tweeted about Cam Mitchell. It's just so funny that this game was, supposed to be a slop fest, and it ends up actually being competitive. And Northwestern really shines when everyone was expecting them to get smacked around. And they have some talent. They have talent on both sides of the ball, and we need to stop pretending like they're not a well-coached team.
Yeah. No, it's like you said, Pat Fitzgerald rarely ever has 2 bad seasons in a row. They're never going to be to the point coaching at Northwestern where it's just like every single year we're going to be a good football team or contending for Big Ten championships. But every other year, every third year, Northwestern's going to put a pretty good product on the field. So they might have a good product this year. We'll see.
So Ryan, there was a headline that popped up on Friday, and it got pushed away as soon as the game started. Florida A&M played North Carolina, and I know that you were, attracted by the performance of Josh Downs, North Carolina receiver, but Florida A&M came into the game with dozens of players that were ruled ineligible because of transfers, academic ineligibility, and there's not a lot of draft prospects coming from Florida A&M. Mismanagement by that program, but that's a separate issue. But Isaiah Land, who was the Buck Buchanan Award winner.
Did you see, Joe? Did you see they almost forfeited their payouts because of the whole situation? If they weren't going to play,
yes, because it was on them for not being eligible. It wasn't like something that they couldn't control. It was all because of their doing. They end up traveling. They end up getting smacked. But Isaiah Land is a draft prospect. Like, he is a draftable prospect. He is on the Senior Bowl watch list. He is going to be on the Buck Buchanan Award watch list. Like, he is a pretty talented FCS edge rusher, probably more of a day 3 prospect. And he doesn't play in this game. And I think it's worth bringing up the concern to not be eligible. I don't know if it's on him or if it's on the coaching staff, but that's problematic. The one game that I think a lot of people wanted to see from him against an ACC opponent, and he's not even on the field because of ineligibility issues, that to me is problematic for his draft stock.
It is, and it's very unfortunate because he's a player that, he led college football in sacks last year. He had 19 sacks. He was fantastic last year for his level, and I don't think it's his fault, Joe. I think just kind of reading between the tea leaves, and even he posted about it, he's basically being victimized for the fact that he was going to transfer and then ended up coming back. So there was like a transfer thing, right? So for now, he's ineligible, which it's not like he's an academic ineligible player or like anything like that. It's literally something with like the transfer thing that he was kind of considering for a little while. So, but the reason that you wanted to see Isaiah Land, to your point, is this is the best team that they're going to play all year is North Carolina. Like, I don't think they have another FBS team on the schedule. I don't think they definitely don't have an ACC team left on the schedule. Like, this is a Power 5 football team. And North Carolina is breaking in basically a brand new offensive line outside of Asim Richards. So, like, he had an opportunity to play against.
He would have dominated. He could have dominated.
I think he could have had some good moments, yeah. And against a quarterback in, what's the kid's name? Drake May, that he's not an athlete like Sam Howell was, right? Like, he's not going to break a ton of tackles and break out of structure. Like, if you get to Drake May, you have a chance to make a sack. And unfortunately, he's not able to play. Have you seen the size on Isaiah Land, though, Joe? I posted about it the other day.
Yeah, he's got like a really interesting frame, right?
6'3" and 5/8.
Yeah.
His arm length is 32 and 5/8, so not very long either. And he was only 208 pounds during the spring measurements, man. So, like, my guy looks more like a wide receiver than a defensive end.
It's
but
Adrian Hope, similar build, the former Furman
so
defensive end.
Adrian Hope's like 4 inches shorter though. But that's a different conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, it's very unfortunate, man. Especially if it's not directly in his control, and it's just very it sucks that he wasn't able to show his worth against the Tar Heels, because that's the reason he came back, right? Is that he wanted to show his worth, but unfortunately was not able to.
Yeah, aggravating for the fact that Florida A&M mismanaged this and all those guys didn't get to play in this game. And I mean, to almost be punished for I don't think he was directly being punished, but to be screwed because he was thinking of going to another school is horrible. But you were interested in what Josh Downs did in this game, and I know the starters didn't play the entire performance against Florida A&M because they didn't need to, because they were playing an FCS team's backups on top of not only playing an FCS team. What did you get from Downs though? Because I admittedly I didn't catch a ton of this game because I was doing our live stream, so I was kind of watching in the background. But what did you get from Downs?
So I was really first and foremost, I actually give Florida A&M a little bit of credit, man. I thought they played pretty tough for a long time.
Yeah,
quarterback's not that bad either. Which
I forget his name, but he's
Sousa or something.
He's one of the better FCS quarterbacks.
Yeah, he did a good job though. Downs, though, man, like the numbers weren't incredibly flashy, Joe, but like he did everything that I wanted to see him kind of improve in this game. Like he's always going to be an incredible athlete. He needed to improve a little bit of his route running, even though he's got big time potential there. But then he had a really nice contested catch for a touchdown in this game as well. So I'm like, if my guy's going to start winning in the air on top of winning just as an athlete and as a route runner, then we're cooking with grease, man. At that point, he's just an all around, every level threat. It wasn't like a gaudy stat line, but you saw things during this game where you're just like, yes, I love to see those types of things from Josh Downs.
So you've got a hop. So let's wrap up with this last guy, Jackson Mitchell from UConn. Saw spurts of this game. I thought UConn was going to really pull out and win this one, but
Did you really though? Did you really?
Well, everyone was talking so highly about Utah State, and for them to be leading at one point, not for very long, but at one point, I had legitimate hope that maybe they would pull it off. But, UConn's still UConn, even under Jim Mora. But Jackson Mitchell, though, thoughts on him? I was interested that you texted me about him. I didn't even think we would ever talk about our UConn player this season.
Outside of Travis Jones last year, there wasn't much to get excited about defensively for UConn last year. They had a kid named Fort who's a decent little safety linebacker hybrid, but Jackson Mitchell led them in tackles last year, Joe, and he was among the national leaders in tackles last season. And in this game, 16 total tackles. And man, there's just something about him, man. Like he is not the biggest guy, 6'1", 6'2", somewhere in that ballpark, 225-ish. But he just has a knack for being around the football. Really good eyes, finishes the play, gets in the backfield, kind of squirms through some tight spaces. Like I think there's something to Jackson Mitchell. Again, like I'm not saying he's top 100 pick, top 150 pick even, but if we're talking about a guy that could sneak in to be draftable and might be a sneaky solid football player at the next level for a role, might have to keep an eye on Jackson Mitchell from UConn.
Yeah, this probably will be one of the few weeks we admittedly talk about him because next week, Ryan, we have some real action. We've got some
unless
big
he has
games.
like 30 tackles next week. You never know. You never know.
Yeah, he might be the one who has to make all the plays because they don't have anybody else. But we've got real games. We're going to preview some of those matchups at the end of the week. We've also got an interview coming this week. The schedule will shift a bit now that the season has started. Make sure you're subscribed and you don't miss out at Joe DeLeone at Rise and Draft, and we will be back with more this week.